meet again at last. The circle is now complete.
What's the world coming to?
Well, you got a problem with what I did, Anthony?
No. Hey, no.
Fucking rat anyways. Whole family's all rats. Would have grew up to be a rat.
Stupid bastard. I can't fucking believe it.
Gee, I'm real sorry your mom blew up, Ricky.
Now you're gonna dig the fucking thing. You're gonna dig the hole. You're gonna do it. I got no fucking line. You're gonna do it.
Yes, I'll take the fucking hole. I don't give a fuck.
I realized that what was living behind that boy's eyes was pure and simply evil.
Jesus Christ. Mister, you okay in there?
Let's visit the coffees around here someplace.
Have you any idea what the cost of your actions is? What their effect might be? Or you to give them hope? What do you give them? We give them happiness. And they give us authority. Groovy.
Welcome everybody to the Cinephellas Podcast. It's August 13th, 2017. I am Chris, coming to you live from the library, as always on behalf of Cinephellas.com, the only place for all your cinephilic needs. Hey everybody, I wanted to start today's podcast off with a short discussion of the events in Charlottesville, Virginia yesterday. Now, you know, sometimes here on the podcast we like to have sketches at the beginning, we read some copy, but I think it's important too that we also talk about some of the important issues that are going on, some current events, some topical matters. So yesterday, a white supremacist rally in Charlottesville turned violent when a vehicle plowed into a crowd. And I want to play for you now a clip of the president responding to the events in Charlottesville.
But we're closely following the terrible events unfolding in Charlottesville, Virginia. We condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence on many sides. On many sides. It's been going on for a long time in our country. Not Donald Trump, not Barack Obama. It's been going on for a long, long time. It has no place in America. What is vital now is a swift restoration of law and order and the protection of innocent lives. No citizen should ever fear for their safety and security in our society, and no child should ever be afraid to go outside and play or be with their parents and have a good time. I just got off the phone with the governor of Virginia, Terry McAuliffe, and we agreed that the hate and the division must stop, and must stop right now. We have to come together as Americans with love for our nation and true affection, really, and I say this so strongly, true affection for each other.
Okay, so that was President Donald Trump responding to the violence at the white supremacist rally in Charlottesville, Virginia yesterday, August 12th, 2017. That clip that you just heard was from a CNN broadcast, but it was the president's own words, of course, while he was giving the official briefing from Bedminster, New Jersey, about 35 minutes from my hometown. I just want to start out by saying, I condemn the president for coming out, and you could see he was reading a prepared statement, which shows that at least there was some thought put into his response. And of course, he's right about several things here, right? I mean, this kind of hatred is something that's been festering for a very long time. I mean, as in American history, we can go back to the founding, of course. We're not going to do that here. But of course, racial complications have been part of the founding of America's fabric for over 200 years. And he's right that we have to come together and show affection. I mean, I was impressed that he used a word like affection because, he's not the warmest guy in the world. But one thing that perplexed me is that he condemned the hatred on many sides. And now, I don't know, here we have an issue of rhetoric. We have an issue of the power of language and words. And this is something that I care a lot about. I've devoted my life to words in many ways, whether it be through writing, different mediums, or whether it be to the art of communication via teaching, or even in this podcast. And one of the biggest criticisms that Trump and many Republicans had of President Obama was that he never would use the term radical Islamic terrorism. And the justification behind that anger was, if you want to call out something and change it, you have to use the exact terminology. Now, there's a lot of speculation here whether or not Trump didn't use the term white supremacist because he doesn't want to upset, or he doesn't want to enrage the white supremacists because maybe he feels like he'll lose support. And now, if we're being honest, I don't feel that, and I could be completely wrong about this. Maybe it's just my own ignorance. Maybe it's just my own sort of, naivete. It's a hard word to say. But I don't feel like he is a white supremacist himself. I feel like, of course, he is misguided in several ways and maybe uninformed about the racial complexities of the United States. But that being the case, if I'm giving him that benefit of the doubt, why wouldn't he use a term like white supremacists? Especially after he wanted to so vehemently attack President Obama for not using certain rhetoric. Now, we can argue here that language is being politicized, which, it always is, not only during campaign seasons, but we see this again and again in politics. And what does that mean for the future? We're so caught up in these petty arguments over what words to use, how to use them, and if we all can't get on the same page, we can't have the same conversation. So how are we supposed to then change any kind of racial conflict in the United States, any kind of conflict whatsoever in the United States, from the national level to interpersonal communication, if we all can't have the same conversation? And maybe that seems idealistic. Maybe it seems like, why are we even thinking in these terms? But at the heart of the matter are words, because words are used to educate. President Obama yesterday posted on Twitter a quote from Nelson Mandela that, to paraphrase, says that no man, or woman for that matter, is born with hatred. It is through language, it is through the nurturing of the community that one learns to hate. And you have to put labels on that hate, and that's where words come in. And if that's the case, then that means that language has so much power to be used for good. And we, as the arbiters of that language, and the teachers that use that language, we can make real change. But again, not if we are on different conversations. I don't know, this sort of seems like fragmented statements maybe to make, but I don't know. I'm concerned at my own disheartening, my own sort of malaise when it comes to strife in the United States at this point, because it's so normal. We have shootings so often. We have racial strife, especially in the last several years, that I'm sort of feeling desensitized, and that concerns me. Because if I'm desensitized, and a lot of it has to do, of course, with this mass media representation of violence as so commonplace, whether it be physical violence, verbal violence, what have you. But it makes me concerned because if I am feeling desensitized, that means that probably many other in my generation are. And then if we feel desensitized, what are we going to be teaching our next generation? All right, well, those are just a few words, but let's get to the show. On today's edition of the podcast, I am talking to Coach Stuart Krohn, coach of the ICEF Rugby program in South LA. He is the head coach and founder of an inner city program for boys and girls, a rugby program that's heavily weighted in academics and community leadership. And through that program, Coach Krohn takes his high school students on journeys throughout the world. And those were documented in 3 short documentaries that were then put together for the film that we're going to be talking about called Red, White, Black, and Blue Odyssey. And so in this film, Coach Krohn takes his students to play in China, New Zealand, and England. So Coach Stuart Krohn is a really interesting guy. He started playing rugby in college, which was a little later than a lot of other professional athletes pick it up, and then he moved to Santa Barbara, where he became an All-American, and then played for the Hong Kong national team. After playing for about 13 years as a phenomenal professional rugby player, he came back to the United States and landed a job coaching for the Santa Monica Men's Club, and he simultaneously taught English for a small charter school in Los Angeles. And it was around that time that Coach Krohn came up with the idea of bringing rugby to the inner city. And he developed a program for the ICEF public schools in 2002 on the small View Park campus at the corner of Crenshaw Boulevard and Slauson in South LA. He's the director of ICEF's rugby program, and he has a staff that teaches the game to thousands of kids in the last 10 years or so, and hundreds of them have gone on to these international rugby tours that I was talking about earlier. As of now, the program is in its 12th season, and as you'll hear in my conversation with Coach Krohn, they have big plans to develop the program from here. I just want to read you a little bit of the rugby program's mission statement here. So ICEF Rugby is a leadership, team building, and character development program. We align ourselves with the ICEF mission of getting our students to attend and compete at the top 100 colleges and universities in the nation. We use rugby as the vehicle to provide skills and ensure this mission can become a reality. So 3 really important things here: leadership, team building, and character development. And all 3 of those are integral to one another. So leadership. In the film, what's really interesting is that you're going to see several individual stories. You know, kids that grew up without secure family structures, and somehow through that they find rugby, and they learn that yes, you have to be a team player, but at the same time you have to be able to take a stand. You have to be able to lead yourself when the situation calls for it, because there will be a lot of times when maybe collectively the group is down and you need to carry the torch. And at the heart of all of that is character development. I mean, we follow one character in the film, one young man named Leotis Van Buren Jr., and his narrative in the film is learning about how to reclaim his name from his father, all while learning how to be a leader on and off the field and excelling in academics to get into a good school. And at the end of my conversation with Coach Krohn, we also have an update on Leotis, which was quite inspiring. The demographic breakdown is about 82% African American, 16% Hispanic. And over 80% of those students are eligible for free and reduced lunch programs, which is, of course, a nationally recognized measure of economic poverty. And I think it's about 83% if I'm remembering correctly from the film, 83% of these students do go on to college and become very successful. For me, what was really interesting was talking to Coach Krohn about how coaching these players, he ends up doubling as a father figure. And he talks a lot about the word compassion and how teaching these students is not only an intellectual endeavor or a physical endeavor as athletes, but helping them develop as human beings. So I got a chance to talk to him a little bit about his influences, who gave him the blueprint for that compassion, and sort of the interesting transition that he made in his own life from professional rugby to teaching to now being a coach and administrator on the field. But talking to Coach Krohn also got me thinking about my experiences. I think, everybody that I've talked to in one way or another had a teacher, usually in high school, and then maybe a professor or two in college, if they've chosen to go to college, that really influenced their lives and helped them find a trajectory. And I've had a lot of those. I've been very fortunate. In high school, I had an English teacher named James Christie. So shout out to Mr. Christie if you're out there listening. He was my sophomore English teacher. And, I'd always been interested in the arts, and he was the first one to put Shakespeare in my hand. And I was in a production of, we just did a scene from it, but A Midsummer Night's Dream, and I played Bottom the Weaver. That got me interested in drama, and I ended up taking some classes with him and performing in the school play where we did a reverse gender role version of The Odd Couple. So instead of, in the original play, you have Oscar and Felix, and their neighbors are the Pigeon Sisters, who are these two English women that live in their building. And we flipped the roles so that the Oscar and Felix characters were played by women, and then myself and my friend, Mr. John Dexter Aguila. Hello, John Dexter Aguila, if you're out there listening. We played Manolo and Jesus, two Spanish brothers. And the characters sort of developed as a mix of Fez from that 70s show and the two wild and crazy guys played by Steve Martin and Dan Aykroyd in the original Saturday Night Live seasons. Probably 76, 77 is when they first debuted those characters. I don't think it was in the first year. Anyway, after that, I was really inspired to do creative things, and I thought, that was a way that I could express myself, especially because family-wise I didn't really have many other outlets, and that became really important to me. And then in college, I had several great advisors. Ben Cifuentes, Professor Ben Cifuentes, he was absolutely life-changing, helped me during my thesis. He was my advisor. I wrote my thesis on Jack Kerouac and the Beat Generation, and that was informative for me because really at the heart of what I was arguing was that Jack Kerouac and the other Beats changed conventional masculinity in the 1950s and 60s and then set this trajectory for the counterculture that followed. And that was really important to me because, I never really felt like I fit in with a lot of my friends. They were like super athletic and, very manly. And that just wasn't me. As I just said, I was more into the arts. And so that was a little bit different. Especially being a straight white male in the arts, you sort of don't know where you belong because it's not as easy of a time to find your place. Then in graduate school, I met Dr. Clement Price, who unfortunately passed away, and that was a true gift to meet Dr. Clement Price. He is known, or was known, as the premier historian of Newark, New Jersey history, and in the civil rights era especially, Newark has a very important role in that story. 1967 had riots alongside Detroit, and they just made a movie about the Detroit riots. Newark is largely overlooked, though, but it was important because, Dr. Price's role was important because he was out there spreading the word about Newark's role in that history when no one else really was. But not even that. Dr. Price was also a well-respected member of the community and with African American history scholars at large. He was even on the board the presidential board of directors when they were establishing the new African American History Museum as part of the Smithsonian chain. So he worked with President Obama a lot as an advisor and several other activists, scholars, to develop what you would now see if you go in there. And I remember I had a graduate seminar with him, and he was telling us about how they were recreating a slave cabin in the museum. And for him, this was a very emotional experience, though he had never been, living in a slave cabin. He grew up in D.C., in the D.C. area. He never lived in a slave cabin, but obviously, because it was such an intense part of his study and his history, he had an emotional connection. And you could see as he was telling us this story that he was getting a little emotional, and that for me was very inspiring because it symbolized everything that I wanted to be in terms of someone who respected history, shared it, but also had emotional growth from that experience. So, who were your influences? Whether they were academic or not. I mean, they could have been a family member, they could have been an employer, they could have been, really mentors come in every shape and size. But, especially in light of what happened in Charlottesville, we're confronted with this hate right now, just another one of these long strings of hateful events in America over the last several years. And I think it's more important than ever to recognize our own positive influences, those that touch our hearts and help us become who we are as professionals, but also just as people. And that's why the work that Coach Krohn is doing in South LA is so important, because he's really giving these kids a second chance. All right, well, I hope you're just as inspired by my conversation with Coach Krohn as I was, and I will see you on the other side. Hello?
Hi, is this Christopher?
Hey, yeah, how are you?
Hi, Christopher. It's Priscilla from Katrina PR. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm great, thank you for asking.
So, I have Coach Stuart on the other line, and I can go in and connect you if you're ready.
Okay, yeah, put him through whenever you're set.
Okay, and the interview's going to be for 15 minutes.
Okay, sounds good to me.
Coach Stuart, you're on with Christopher.
Okay, hi Christopher.
Hey, Coach, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. I'm really excited to talk to you about the film.
Okay, cool. Have you seen it?
I have, yeah. I got the link, the screener link, and I watched it twice actually. So it was it definitely made an impact.
You liked it?
Oh yeah, I thought it was great, and I love the human story behind it, and so that's the kind of the basis of a lot of the questions that I wanted to discuss with you today.
Okay, great. I'm ready.
All right, cool. So first thing I want to ask is, it's such a unique story. How did the idea to film and develop a documentary around the ICEF Rugby program start?
It started from people wanting to film it because we're based here, so there's so many filmmakers around here, and they're all looking for unique stories. So I think the first person who did a short pilot kind of reel on it was like in 2008 or something, and then more people started coming at us, and we had experiences with different filmmakers and reality TV who were pitching a program on us. And I had a couple bad experiences with people who did they did, I don't know which, sizzle reel. Mm-hmm. Like they would put some footage together and did sizzle reels. And what I found was like, I'm not going to have any control over the outcome of this film, but I started this program, but it's going to be exploitive in different ways, Yeah. And so what happened was I was friends with the Consul General of New Zealand, who was based in LA, and there was a film company coming over from New Zealand called Cloud South, and they made documentaries, and sensitive and just, good films. And I met with them, and I went to New Zealand and met with them, and they, put me in touch with James Brown, the guy who, he edited and directed the first film that we did, Red, White, Black, and Blue. Yeah. And then I just hired him to travel with us on the other trips, and we made 3 documentaries, Red, White, Black, and Blue 1, 2, and 3. And then this version, Red, White, Black, and Blue Odyssey, we decided to combine the 3 of them together into one Odyssey. So we just wanted to work with a filmmaker who had the whole point the camera and shoot, let the kids tell the story. We're not trying to, there's no like, hey, when we make this movie, let's make this or let's make that or advertise this or that. It's just like I always said to him, just point the camera and shoot, because we've been doing trips before and I knew it was a unique program because of great content. All you have to do is point and shoot. Don't try to tell a story. And James was he's an artist. He's an incredible filmmaker. He's a editor by profession. These are the films that he's actually directed are ours. And he's just awesome to work with. So he was here for the screening the other night, and we shot the last. We're making one last film, Red, White, Black, and Blue Odyssey 2, which is going to show a new group of kids traveling through Japan, Brazil, and Fiji over a 3-year period. Oh, wow. So it's going to be also a beautiful film. So he's just a great guy to work with, and he's very non-judgmental, has a nuanced view. And yeah.
So that's what you're working on right now, the second one?
Yeah.
Cool.
We're finishing that up.
So you mentioned in the film that when you were thinking about where you were going to kind of set up a team, you wanted to bring it to a community that might be, a little struggling, that might not have the background of rugby. So what made you choose the Los Angeles?
I definitely wanted to. Inner city.
Yeah.
For sure.
And so what made you choose Los Angeles specifically?
Well, because the one reason is that I thought about LA or Southern California was because the weather's good all year round. You can play a lot of rugby here.
Yeah.
There's a huge there's a massive urban community here as well. And also, I was hired by Santa Monica Rugby Club, brought me over to coach them. And there was a guy simultaneously who was starting from the club who was starting, View Park, the first charter school. And I was hired to be a 5th grade teacher. They had one more 5th grade class coming in, and they hired, because I was Santa Monica, I was going to coach them, and they needed to find me a full-time job as well with the coaching. I got hired by this guy. It fit my dream of a place, where I could eventually start an inner city rugby program. So I knew when I got offered to teach at the school, and I came here to interview, and I visited the site 18 years ago, I thought, this is fate coming together here, and they were just K through 5th grade. And I'm like, in a couple of years, these kids will be ready to play rugby. And I used to bring rugby. They knew I was coaching Santa Monica.
Yeah.
And that Mr. Piskel, the founder of ICEF, was a rugby guy. And they knew about rugby. And I would bring a rugby ball on field trips and stuff. But when they got to be in middle school and older, that's when I started the rugby program in 2003.
So what was it like for you?
It's been growing ever since.
Yeah, what was it like for you to transition from playing rugby into teaching and then coaching?
I teach the way I coach, or I did really then. So it was hard because, you've seen the film, you see how I am. Yeah. I'm not as crazy as that now, but I was like that for a really long time. And I was like that on the field too, even more.
Oh, wow.
It's, I got a lot of energy and I need to get it out. And so it's tough transitioning from being a player to a coach and teacher, and, from being just a person who's traveling around But it's part of life. Fortunately, it happened for me at some point. That's a blessing.
Yeah.
It was hard. The kids helped me get through it.
Yeah, that's fascinating, right? Because there's this definite theme throughout the film of the coach doubling as a sort of father figure for a lot of these kids that unfortunately don't have that, right?
Yep.
And you just
Mr. Hughes, Coach Hughes.
Yeah, Coach Hughes, definitely. And then
English guy I work with.
And you talk about the necessity of compassion in the film.
Right? I talk about compassion?
Yeah, there's a scene where you're talking about the differences of coaching males and females, and you're talking about a sort of a certain compassion. So I was wondering, like, how do you balance that extreme intensity that you have, and that you had even more of, with the compassion that's necessary to be a good role model?
Well, I think you develop compassion within yourself. Like, that's something that we develop. I mean, that's one of the points of the film, is to help develop compassion for people who a lot of people have, preconceived ideas about. I mean, I think the film helps bring more compassion, and I'm about that. So, I think I'm a compassionate person, so it's within me. And so, that's why I think the kids sense that, and that's why they're willing to, put up with me at times, because they know that I care about them. People know, but I don't want to be abusive, so either. So, developing compassion is like really important. And I'm trying to develop it within myself, and I'm trying to develop it within them too. That's really important.
Who were the biggest influences in your life that showed you the blueprint of compassion?
Well, I mean, everybody's first influences are their parents and, their family. So my family, my mom's an incredibly compassionate person. And then I had, coaches along the way who were very influential. There was a guy in Hong Kong who was my coach for 8 years called George Simpkin. And he was crazy, crazier than me, maybe same level. But we all knew that he loved us and cared about us, and we cared about him. We still did about me. And I hear from him all these years after. He was a huge influence in my life. And just all my, teammates and people that I've been close to, I'm still close with those people, They support the program. My family, coaches, friends, people that I surround, my wife, probably. Probably my wife, number one. She's the main one. First my mom, then my wife, Kazuki. She's been more centered, and she's the one I talk to all the time about everything. And when I'm going through something with a student and stuff, she's the one who she really centers me on the regular basis. Number one influence, and people that know me would say, after, my mom helped develop me, but my wife, she shaped me. She took the raw clay.
That's interesting too. There's
Kazuki. Her name is Kazuki.
Who was that?
My wife's name is Kazuki. Kazuki.
Yeah. How did you guys meet?
Through a fellow teacher. We met through somebody I was taking teaching classes with when I first got here 18 years ago, and that person was teaching with Kazuki, and cause my wife is really sporty and I'm sporty, and we were hanging out together and just through each other like friends. We're introduced as friends through a mutual friend, and we blossomed from there.
So that decision to base yourself in Southern California really expanded your professional and personal life then?
Well, we fell in love and got married and had a child, and we love it. Exactly. I didn't think I was going to be here. I thought I was going to accomplish all of this in 3 years.
Oh, wow. 3 years.
Yeah. and then I thought I'd move on. But like, I love LA now. I love this city.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I love it.
It's a good place.
I really do. It's so cool. Like, it's so, you could spend a lifetime and you'll never discover this place. It's like, and it just keeps, you know, it's so diverse. I mean, if we're talking about metropolitan LA,
Mm-hmm.
from like, you know, the OC to Mount Baldy to, you know, Thousand Oaks,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that way to Catalina, that way. It's just like so different, you know. Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, there are surprises around every corner.
Yeah, and then there's, you know, South LA
Mm-hmm.
as well, which is, you know, unique and interesting. Great people, as you can see in the film, some incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I'm just like one little spot here in LA to do our thing.
Yeah, speaking of those students, at the end of the film, we leave Leotis and he's on his way to Bodwin College, and then we leave Nia when she's on her way, or she's already in New Zealand training for the Olympics. So I was wondering, how are they doing today?
Right. Yeah, they were at the screening and they were on the stage with me after for Q&A. Actually, just right as you were calling, I was looking at a text from him because he just got back to college in Maine. Mm-hmm. So he came in for the screening as well. He flew in from Maine and then flew back. I flew him in, actually, for the Q&A.
That's great.
So he's a junior now. And, you know, he's had his academic struggles. Boverton is a very tough school. Very, very hard, especially on the paper writing side. But they're supporting him and helping him get through those challenges. And, yeah, he's progressing. And Nia took 1 year off before going to college, so she took a gap year just to grow. She got injured right before the Olympics, was unable, you know, she didn't make the final cut, and then she was injured.
Mm-hmm.
And, but she's just recovering from that injury now, and she's been playing different, she's got a full scholarship to American International College in Springfield, Massachusetts. She's got a full rugby scholarship, so I think she's leaving today, going to AIC, so she's going to Springfield, Mass today for college.
Wow.
So that's really awesome.
Wow.
And she's a superstar rugby player. Like, she was offered a professional contract in Japan last year to go in the spring for like 5 months, and she got injured right before going to that. So she couldn't go, but that offer's still on the table. She's still, you know, she would be the first fully professional American woman rugby player, and she will be, in my opinion.
I mean, she definitely has the drive.
She's got the drive and she's got the ability. I mean, she's really, really fast. She's really powerful. Yeah, and she's really passionate. So, you know, yeah, it's all still there for her. I think she's young. She's like, I think she just turned 19. You know, the next Olympics is in 3 years. She would be 22 for the Tokyo Games.
Mm-hmm.
She would be 26 for Paris, and she'd be 30 and in her prime for LA.
Wow.
So I'm really looking forward to that, watching her play.
So big
Step up center in 2020, 2028.
Yeah, big things to come.
And yeah.
Cool. So
With other of her teammates.
Yeah, and so kind of wrapping that part up, like, what do you see next for the ICEF program? Like, where do you see it in 5 years?
What's happening right now, like where I'm sitting right now, we're building our first field. It's a half field at a leadership. We're creating a leadership academy where the kids from the high school and all the other schools can come and do exceptional stuff in the arts and athletics and academics. It's one of our old campuses where we've got classrooms and a little 30 by 40 yard field. We're putting a weight room in. I'm sitting in the classroom. I'm going to be teaching a leadership class to the general high school students that come to the academy this year. So, and the goal, the end goal is that we have a full field, a blossoming, you know, leaders through the high school, through extraordinary arts, athletics, and academic classes, and, you know, that's the goal. And I'd like there to be an endowment for the program, the rugby, so it can keep going, so it's self-sustaining. And, you know, and that Leotis is running the program. one of the kids, and we're developing that. Like Leotis said at the Q&A, like he's thinking about becoming an English teacher and coming back to View Park and teaching English. So those kids are better prepared for riding at Bowdoin, and also coaching the rugby and helping run the rugby program. It's in his heart. So I'm recruiting him. I'm actually recruiting another guy who's graduating the year before him. Another amazing kid, super smart, who wants to come and teach and coach and be a part of it. He's been playing rugby in college too. So, yeah. Just keeping it going, you know, for making it so it's self-sufficient. Yeah.
We're running late on time. Sorry about that.
Cool. No, I just want to say in closing, congratulations, and I'm excited for the film, and I'm excited to see where the program develops.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for taking the time to talk with me and sharing our story. Are you going to review the film as well?
Yeah, so what I do is I have the interview portion, and then around the interview portion I craft a little, kind of like review and, just with information about your program, how to see the film, things like that.
Awesome, man. I can't wait to read it.
Cool, thank you. I appreciate that.
And we'll stay in touch, and hopefully we'll be doing this again for Red White the Odyssey 2, the second one.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it already.
In a year or so.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it already.
Cool.
All right, my friend. Have a good day. Thanks again so much.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye.
Thanks, Christopher.
Thank you. All right, so that's great to hear that Leotis and Nia are doing well. I think when you see this film, you're going to be really touched by Leotis's storyline, but also Nia. I mean, the coach was absolutely right when he said in our discussion that Nia is one of the most determined people that he's ever met, and I want to see her in the Olympics. I think when they get here to Los Angeles in a few years, Nia's going to be making some waves. She's going to be about 30 years old by then, and she's going to crush it. I don't believe there's anything that can get in her way, not even an injury. All right, well, don't forget to check out Red, White, Black, and Blue Odyssey on August 15th. And, I think this is also a good opportunity to check into your local area, your community development programs, and see, what athletics do they have going on, what intellectual events do they have going on. I think we can all stand to be more involved in our communities, and yes, I understand that it takes a lot of time, but it's well worth it. All right, so this is Chris signing off, reminding you to share a movie and some ideas and some thanks with someone you love. And I will see you next time.